One moment I thought I had the perfect life. The next, a random TV news report showed me the woman I loved, and the best friend I trusted, betraying me in the worst possible way. What happened after that changed everything. Hey everyone, and welcome to what turned out to be the real story of betrayal in my life. I was sitting at my desk, casually adjusting some wall dimensions on the computer monitor in front of me, when a breaking news segment on the TV caught my ear. I glanced up, half listening, as the anchor started talking about a murder that had just happened over in nearby Ocala. What I saw next hit me like a punch to the gut. There, clear as day on the screen, was a long shot of two people stepping out of a cheap motel room, and it wasn't just anyone. It was my wife, Claire, and my best friend, Mike. Claire had told me she was knocking off work early to do some shopping. Mike was supposed to be up in Gainesville, checking on one of our job sites. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. What was this? A million scenarios raced through my head all at once. Still, I knew better than to jump to conclusions without proof. I couldn't just throw accusations around without something solid to back it up. This whole thing had caught me completely off guard. Claire and I had been married for 14 years, and Mike and his wife Laura had been our closest friends for a decade. The three of us, Claire, Mike and I, had built a business together from the ground up. We ran an architectural services firm, each of us taking on different roles that matched our strengths. Mike Foster and his wife had practically become family. I handled all the design work. I have a degree in architecture, while Claire managed the business side of things. Mike was the one who got out in the field, making sure everything was built exactly how I had drawn it up. It had been working like a dream for years. Especially after I won a big-time award 4 years back for designing a new city hall for a nearby city. That award opened every door you could imagine. Overnight, we were getting calls from everywhere, and we had to quadruple our staff to keep up. Before long, I had a dozen architects working under me. We even built a brand new office building to keep up with our growth. 7 stories tall, and we took the entire top floor for ourselves. Renting out the rest of the building helped pay off the mortgage, with plenty left over for profit. We had all put money into the business at the start. I had invested 50%, Claire 25%, and Mike had covered the rest. It felt like we were in it together, chasing something real. At that point, I had about 20 major projects running at the same time, working long hours but planning to slow down soon. I thought we had built something strong, something unshakable. That afternoon shook me to my core. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know who to trust. Then the receptionist buzzed my office to tell me a package had just arrived for me, addressed to a Mr. John Nelson. Inside was a DVD. Curious, and honestly still shaken, I popped it into the player right away. I ended up watching it 3 times just to be sure I wasn't seeing things. Turns out, I hadn't caught everything the first time around. Before I had even tuned in, the news footage had already caught Claire and Mike on camera, right there inside the motel doorway. And clear as day, before they stepped out, they shared a kiss. Right there, caught in the background, plain as could be. Room 116. While the reporter talked about the crime scene, there they were, wrapped up in each other. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I kept asking myself, how could I have been so blind? Were they lying to me in other ways too? Were they stealing from the business behind my back? I didn't know what was real anymore. I realized pretty quickly that if I wanted to get to the bottom of things, I needed to quietly have the books checked. Claire had always managed the financial side of our firm, and to be honest, I'd never once questioned her. I trusted her without hesitation. But now, I couldn't ignore that gnawing doubt in my gut. The challenge was figuring out how to get both Claire and Mike out of town long enough to bring in someone who could conduct a forensic audit without raising any red flags. Then it hit me. Claire and I were already scheduled to attend the Southeastern Architects Association conference next week. It was a 3-day event out of state, perfect cover. I just have to make sure she still wanted to go and that Mike stayed occupied elsewhere. It wasn't long before things started to show little cracks. We had our usual get-together with Mike and his wife Laura at our place. We were sitting around after dinner when Laura casually asked if anyone had heard about that murder at the Nobility Motel in town. The moment the words left her mouth, I noticed Claire flinch ever so slightly. Mike, on the other hand, stayed cool as a cucumber. He even chimed in, asking if that was the same motel where we had done some renovation work a couple of years ago. I nodded, confirming it was. All the while I kept a close eye on Laura. She looked almost serene. There was a certain calm about her that made me wonder, did she know about the affair? Maybe she was even poking the bear a little, subtly pushing things along. Later after dinner we were all pitching in to clean up. Claire was at the sink washing dishes. Mike was drying. Laura was putting leftovers away. I couldn't help but feel like I was standing there with strangers. It took everything I had not to lose it then and there. I believed deep down that Claire and Mike had been together earlier that very afternoon, and now, acting like nothing had happened, Claire had the nerve to flirt with me, wanting to be intimate after dinner. I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. I mumbled something about needing some air and rushed out of the house, feeling like my heart was about to explode. I ended up at a little diner down the street, sitting in a corner booth just trying to catch my breath. That's where Debbie found me. Debbie was one of the younger employees at our company. She worked part-time answering phones and helping around the office. As soon as she saw me sitting there, she slid into the booth across from me, concern all over her face. She reached out and gently touched my hand. "You're talking about Mrs. Claire and Mr. Mike, right?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. Debbie shook her head. "Your wife is one of the most beautiful and classy women I've ever seen," she said quietly. "But Mr. Mike, I don't like him. He always looks at me funny." He never said anything outright, but it always made me uncomfortable. Her words hit me hard, like someone had pulled a heavy weight off my chest. I realized in that moment just how blind I'd been. I didn't really know the people around me as well as I thought I did. I didn't know where their loyalties were. But for some reason I trusted Debbie completely. "Thank you, Debbie," I said, my voice breaking a little. It felt like the first real moment of honesty I'd had with anyone in weeks. I leaned back in the booth, studying this young woman who seemed so genuine. I couldn't help but grin a little through the pain. "You know," I said, chuckling softly, "maybe all this trouble with my wife is partly my fault. Maybe I haven't been giving her the attention she needed." Debbie squeezed my hand gently, offering comfort without saying a word. "I'll watch Dolly while you go to classes like tonight," she said, referring to my dog. "You don't need to worry." I smiled and gave her hand a reassuring pat. "Debbie, if you ever need anything at all, you just let me know." We sat there for a moment, the hum of the diner around us, both lost in our own thoughts. "What are you studying in college?" I asked finally. "Business administration," she said, smiling shyly. "Haven't figured out exactly what I want to do yet. College is tough and the tuition's been hard on me, but I'll make it work now that I've got a good job." I couldn't help but admire her spirit. I chuckled again, trying my best to sound like an old man teasing a grandkid. "Sweetie, I have a little proposition for you if you're willing." She laughed, that easy kind of laugh that made you feel like maybe the world wasn't completely broken after all. She agreed with a warm smile, taking the small envelope I slid across the table. "Yes, sir, Mr. John," she said with a playful salute. "I'll report my progress later. If I get done early, I'll let you know." I couldn't help but smile back at her. "If you need more time, that's fine. You can gather some extra information too. No rush." She nodded eagerly. "Do you stop here every evening around the same time?" I asked, half hoping I'd have a reason to come back. "Usually," she said. "This is my dinner most nights. It's all I have time for." "If I don't see you later this afternoon," I said warmly, "I'll see you here tomorrow." "I'll try to meet you tonight," Debbie had said before I left for the conference. Sure enough, by noon the following day she was already back at the office, working like clockwork. One of the guys at the conference, someone I barely knew, struck up a conversation with me during one of the breaks. He leaned in and said, "You know, John, you might be right to keep an eye out. I've heard that under the right circumstances, even the most loyal woman might slip. It's not about love, it's about opportunity sometimes." I nodded, uneasy. Claire had always had her share of admirers, that much was true. She was the kind of woman who drew attention without even trying. "I get what you're saying," I replied, staring into my coffee cup. "A lot of men have had their eyes on her for years, but at the end of the day she's still my wife." The conference itself went well. Claire and I managed to act like everything was normal. Meanwhile, I made sure to call Debbie every day just to check in. She was diligent, like clockwork, and Sunday morning she reported that she had gathered all the information I had asked for. Said she'd have everything sitting neatly on my desk first thing Monday morning. When I walked into the office that morning, my nerves were stretched tighter than a banjo string. I couldn't focus. My stomach twisted with every ring of the phone, every creak in the building. Then, like a ray of sunshine breaking through heavy clouds, I heard the click-click of heels down the hallway. Debbie peeked her head around my door and gave me a small, bright smile. She was early. Thank God. "Morning, boss," she chirped, stepping inside. "How are you today?" I chuckled nervously. "I don't know yet. I haven't opened the investigator's report." "Did you read it?" I asked her, searching her face for any clue. Debbie hesitated, her eyes darting away for a second before she nodded. her expression clouded with sadness. That's when I noticed a tear slowly sliding down her cheek. I sat down heavily, feeling like the air had been sucked from the room. With a shaking hand, I pulled the plain brown envelope from my desk drawer and set it in front of me. Before I could open it, the buzzer went off again. "Mrs. Foster is here," Debbie's voice came through the intercom. "Show her in," I said. Moments later, Laura Foster walked into the room, followed closely by Debbie, who quietly slipped into a chair by the door, her notepad ready. I offered Laura a polite smile. "I'm glad you're here, Laura. What's about to happen today concerns you just as much as it concerns me." Across the room, Claire and Mike exchanged uneasy glances. Their body language was screaming guilt. I cleared my throat. "I think everyone here knows Miss Summers," I said, nodding toward Debbie. "She's helping out while Marge is on maternity leave. She's also here to take notes today." I gestured toward the TV monitor on the wall. "Now," I said quietly, "I'd like you all to watch this." As the footage played, the footage of Claire and Mike stepping out of that motel room, and worse yet, sharing that kiss, Claire's face drained of color. Mike tried to keep a straight face, but even he couldn't hide the panic flashing across his eyes. When it ended, the room was thick with silence. Claire finally spoke, her voice trembling. "John, please, let me keep my share of the company. I'll step away, be a silent partner. I don't want anything else. Just send me my dividends when you pay Laura." Her eyes turned to Laura, full of sorrow. "Laura, please, forgive me. I never meant for this to happen. I'm so sorry." Tears streamed down her cheeks now, her voice cracking with every word. "It's all my fault. I was weak. I threw away the best man I ever knew, and now I have nothing. Nothing left to live for. I was so foolish. So incredibly foolish." I sat there, feeling numb, listening to the woman I once adored fall apart in front of me. My voice came out steady but distant. "Claire, you can have the house," I said. "I could never live there again anyway. I'll get my things out as soon as I find a place." There was no anger left in me, just an aching emptiness. Later, after the meeting, Debbie came by my office. She stood in the doorway, her cheeks still slightly flushed from everything that had happened. "I hope," she said quietly, "that I earned that promotion for more than just bringing you bad news." I gave her a soft, tired smile. "Don't worry about that," I said gently. "Your promotion has nothing to do with kisses, and it never will." She laughed softly, the first real laugh either of us had shared in days. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a tiny sliver of hope break through the clouds. "I gave you this job, Debbie, because I believe in you," I said, meaning every word. "I need someone I can count on, someone to help me steer this company the right way. I need your eyes and ears on everything." Promoting Debbie had turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made for the business. She might have been small in stature, but she was a force of nature, a little tornado of energy who kept things running smoothly and shielded me from the countless petty problems that used to eat away at my time. She understood, better than most, that my job was to be the heart of the company, the one who kept the vision alive. Her role was to make sure all the smaller gears kept turning so I could focus on the big picture. Later that afternoon, I had to handle another detail left over from the mess Mike had left behind. I called in one of the junior managers. "Bring me the keys from Mike's old office," I said, glancing up from my paperwork. The guy hesitated, awkward. "Sir, we don't really have a parking space set aside for that position anymore." I smiled thinly. "Well, change the sign on Mike's old space. It belongs to Miss Summers now." "Yes, sir," he said quickly and rushed off to get it done. It was a small thing, but it felt like a fresh start. A new chapter. That evening, as the day wound down, I heard a familiar knock at my door. Debbie popped her head in, her daughter Dolly clutching her hand. "We're heading out," Debbie said, smiling brightly. I couldn't help but pretend to pout dramatically, sticking out my bottom lip like a child about to cry. Dolly's big brown eyes grew wide with concern. "Mama, Mr. John is crying," she said, her little voice full of worry. Debbie laughed, but both of them stepped inside. "What's wrong, Mr. John?" Debbie asked, playing along. "I'm just sad," I said, heaving an exaggerated sigh. Dolly forgot to give me a goodbye kiss. Before I even finished the sentence, Dolly came running toward me, arms wide open. I scooped her up, holding her close as she planted a big, smacking kiss on my cheek. "I love you, Mr. John," she squealed. I hugged her tightly, feeling something warm and good settle deep in my chest. As I set her down, Debbie shook her head and laughed. "John, you're playing me like a fiddle," she said, half accusing, but there was nothing but affection in her voice. "Not really," I said with a grin. "Remember? You're the one who talked me into starting a daycare in the first place, that very first day we met. You've been maneuvering me ever since. Debbie looked a little sheepish, her cheeks coloring slightly. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be pushy. I guess I care too much sometimes. I hope you're not mad at me. I shook my head. Debbie, that's exactly why I hired you. You do the things I don't always want to do but that need to be done. You keep me on track, make sure I get to meetings on time, prep me for appointments, send birthday cards to the employees when I'd probably forget. You keep the heart of this place beating. I couldn't ask for better. Her face lit up with a proud, beautiful smile that made my heart skip a beat. I watched her carefully then, realizing just how much she had come to mean to me, not just in the office but in every part of my life. As I poured out what was in my heart, Debbie's smile grew even wider. Before I could say another word, she surprised me by jumping lightly into my lap, wrapping her arms around my neck and kissing me softly. Then, laughing, she began raining little kisses all over my face, on my forehead, my cheeks, my nose, everywhere. Between kisses she whispered, "John, honey, I love you too. And Dolly loves you so, so much." I felt a silly, boyish smile take over my face. Debbie kissed me again, slower this time, her hands gentle on my shoulders. "I want to wake up beside you every morning," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I want to be with you. But I don't know how to please you, John. You'll have to teach me everything about intimacy." Hearing those words, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes, I realized something deep inside me. Life had broken me down, but somehow here was this woman, this tiny, fierce, tender woman, helping put the pieces back together. I smiled at her, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. "Oh, I don't know a whole lot about intimacy," Debbie said, shyly twirling a lock of hair between her fingers, "but I do know enough to start. I just need a little coaching." I smiled at her, feeling my heart melt all over again. "All right," I teased. "Let's start simple. Come here and give me a proper kiss." Her eyes lit up and she grinned mischievously. "I'll be right back," she said and dashed off toward the bathroom. When she returned, she was wrapped up in a fluffy towel, her cheeks flushed pink, and she raced through the bedroom and into the living area, giggling like a schoolgirl. Within seconds she was back, clutching a small, worn notebook to her chest. She bounced onto the bed beside me, flipping open the notebook and thumbing through the pages. She stopped on one titled, "Marriage Information." The page was neatly organized, listing addresses, phone numbers, and office hours for everything we could possibly need: courthouses, notary offices, even places to pick up marriage licenses. There was even a small section at the bottom outlining some basic costs: $5,000, probably estimating clothes, rings, and whatever else crossed her mind. Debbie's eyes sparkled as she handed it to me. "How long do we have until the clerk's office closes tonight?" she asked eagerly. "If we need to," I said, laughing, "we can always come back first thing tomorrow morning." Her excitement was contagious. Debbie crossed her arms and planted herself firmly in front of me, hands on her hips, trying to look serious but barely holding back her smile. "Don't I get a say in all this, Mr. John?" "You sure do, sweetheart," I chuckled. "You pick out anything you like, anything you need. I'll tell you if I like it, but the final choice is yours." She gave me a playful little wink. "And just so you know," I added, "you're getting a whole new wardrobe. Dolly's turn comes tomorrow." At the boutique, while we were shopping, the assistant who was helping us leaned over to Debbie and whispered, "Where in the world did you find a guy like this?" Debbie beamed, her cheeks glowing with happiness. "I got lucky," she said simply. "I would have loved him even if he had holes in his socks." Watching her light up like that made my heart ache in the best way. She tried on outfit after outfit, and honestly she looked breathtaking in every single thing she modeled. There was one dress though, a soft, deep blue one that fit her like it had been made just for her. It hugged her figure perfectly, and when she spun around laughing, I knew right then and there that every penny spent was worth it. A happy bride, I thought, is truly the most beautiful sight you'll ever see. That night, after Dolly had drifted off to sleep, I pulled Debbie onto my lap on the couch. We shared a few sweet, lingering kisses, small, gentle promises of the life ahead of us. At one point, I leaned back and said quietly, "Maybe now's a good time for you to call your mom. Tell her our news." Debbie hesitated, nibbling her lip. "I'm a little nervous," she admitted. "But, you're right. She should hear it from me." The next day we all got dressed up, well, as dressed up as our country hearts knew how. Dolly looked absolutely adorable in black tights and tiny black boots. Debbie matched her little girl perfectly, black leggings tucked into tall black boots, both of them topping it off with bright red ball caps pulled over their golden ponytails. Together they were the cutest sight I'd ever seen. Separately, Debbie looked like something straight out of a country fashion catalog. Faded jeans, a light blue button-up, a navy blazer and a pair of simple sneakers. It wasn't fancy but it was real. It was her. Debbie led the way to a beautiful old home just outside town. As we pulled under the portico, the front door opened, and an elegant older woman stepped outside, followed by a tall, silver-haired man. The woman's face lit up the moment she saw Debbie. "Debbie Summers," she said warmly, stretching her arms out wide. And in that moment, standing there with Dolly on my hip and Debbie at my side, I realized something deep and sure. This wasn't just a new beginning. It was the real beginning I had been waiting for my whole life. I stepped aside, giving Debbie and her mother a few moments to reconnect while Dolly nestled into her grandmother's arms, giggling like she didn't have a care in the world. Inside the house, the warmth of family filled the air. Dolly sat contentedly on her grandmother's lap, her little legs swinging as she chattered away. Debbie caught my eye from across the room, her face soft with love, and I couldn't help but smile back, feeling that quiet, certain happiness settle deep inside me. Debbie's Uncle Bill, who insisted I just call him Bill, stepped forward, shaking my hand warmly. "You know," he said, giving me a thoughtful look, "I recognize you. You came by a few months ago, pitched a proposal for a new clubhouse at our country club." I laughed, remembering the project. "That's right," I said. Small world. We all sat down to a simple but hearty lunch, and it didn't take long to see that Dolly and Mrs. Summers were fast on their way to becoming the best of friends. Watching them made my heart ache in the best possible way. It felt right. It felt like home. Time passed and life settled into a new, beautiful rhythm. One afternoon, though, I noticed something odd. I walked by Debbie's old desk and saw the new secretary sitting there, looking a little lost and honestly more than a little upset. Later, when she stepped into my office, she quietly closed the door behind her and twisted her hands nervously. "How's the new girl working out?" she asked, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite place. I smiled and leaned back in my chair. "She's doing fine," I said. "But she just doesn't have the same charm as Debbie did." At that, the poor girl's face crumpled and a tear slipped down her cheek. My heart twisted instantly. I stood up, crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her in a comforting hug. Hey, I said gently. "I'm only teasing. Nobody could ever replace Debbie. She and Dolly will always have a place in my heart. Nobody else even comes close." She sniffled and nodded, and I realized once again just how deeply Debbie had affected everyone she met. Several hours later, right as the day was winding down, I heard those familiar clicking heels again. I looked up from my desk just in time to see Debbie standing there, her beautiful face lit up with that big, irresistible smile. "Hi, honey," she said. "You ready to go home?" "I sure am," I said, pushing my chair back and standing to meet her. "Let's go," she said, taking my arm and holding it tightly as we made our way toward the elevator. Inside the crowded lift, she pressed against me, her head resting lightly against my shoulder. She tilted her face up and whispered, "I love you." I smiled and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "I love you too, sweetheart," I said. She giggled quietly and in a whisper meant just for me she added, "Me too." Just then one of our tenants, a senior partner from a law firm 2 floors down, grinned at us from across the elevator. "John," he said with a wink, "why don't you two get a room?" Everyone chuckled, but Debbie just beamed up at me, her eyes full of mischief and love. Later, as we were walking to the parking garage, a voice from behind called out, "Hey, isn't that John and Debbie?" We turned around and found ourselves facing Jeff, a guy Debbie vaguely knew. He smirked and said, "Kids like Dolly should be raised by their real fathers, not some stranger." Before I could even open my mouth, another man, Irving, a tenant who knew our story, cut him off sharply. "You're wrong, Jeff," Irving said. "John is Dolly's father in every way that matters. He and Debbie have been together for 4 years. They couldn't get married sooner because he had to get through a messy divorce. You should mind your business." Jeff squinted, looking confused. "I know her," he said stubbornly. "You worked at the Carter Brothers department store in Ocala. You sold women's shoes." Debbie stiffened. "I'm sorry," she said firmly, "but you're mistaken. I've never worked in Ocala a day in my life. Before I came to work for John, I was a secretary at a car dealership in Gainesville." Her voice was calm, but I could see the fire in her eyes. Jeff stammered something under his breath and slunk away, clearly embarrassed. As we continued to the car, Debbie shook her head. "People like that," she muttered, "can do real damage if you let them." Then she turned to me, fierce and protective, lifting my hand and gently drying the slight tremor in it. "Nobody," she said firmly, threatens my man or my baby and gets away with it. I stopped right there in the parking lot and pulled her into my arms. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she clung to me, her body trembling. I almost lost you, didn't I? She whispered against my chest. I kissed the top of her head. No, I said quietly. You found me. I pulled Debbie close and held her tightly, feeling her tremble slowly ease away as I cradled her in my arms. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing together until finally the shaking stopped and she let out a long, steady sigh against my chest. After a while, I kissed the top of her head and said softly, "Why don't you go get ready for bed? I'll lock everything up down here." She nodded, wiping the last of the tears from her cheeks, and disappeared down the hall. When I finished double-checking the doors and windows, I found her already tucked under the covers, waiting for me. I slid into bed beside her, and she immediately snuggled against me, her hand finding mine under the blanket. We laid there, whispering about everything and nothing, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I brought up something that had been weighing on my mind. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice low. "Maybe it's time we both looked into getting concealed carry permits." Debbie lifted her head slightly, curious. "You serious?" I nodded. "Yeah. Might not be a bad idea to also take a local self-defense class. Martial arts maybe. Just to be safe." She smiled thoughtfully. "I like that idea. I want to be able to protect Dolly, and you too." The next day we found ourselves in a small gun shop, looking over some options. Debbie's eyes lit up when she spotted a sleek little pistol in the display case. "Can I try this one?" she asked the clerk eagerly. It was a .380 caliber. A lightweight, easy-to-handle weapon perfect for someone just starting out. "Uncle Bill used to have something like this," she said, lifting it carefully. "His was a .32 caliber though. What do you think of the .380? I smiled at her. "I like it better than the .32. They're almost identical except for the cartridge. And honestly, what matters most is that you're comfortable with it." I chuckled, remembering something my dad always used to say. An accurate shot to the right spot matters more than the size of the bullet. Debbie's eyes widened with understanding. "Wow. That actually makes a lot of sense," she said. We spent some more time in the shop, fitting the gun to her grip and picking out a purse designed for concealed carry. When she pointed out that the concealed pocket was a little too snug, I grinned and said, "Easy fix. I'll have the silk lining removed on that side and shift your stuff to the other compartment." Debbie laughed, her whole face lighting up. "I swear you think of everything. You're my hero, you know that." The shop owner, who had been eavesdropping with a friendly grin, chimed in. "He really shoot that well?" Debbie looked at him with complete confidence. "He can shoot a target the size of a quarter from a plastic bag, at double the distance most folks manage standing still." The man whistled in admiration. I just winked at Debbie, loving the way she believed in me without question. One afternoon, as I was going through paperwork in my office, Debbie slipped in, quietly closing the door behind her. She had that playful glint in her eye, the one that always meant trouble of the best kind. Without a word, she climbed into my lap, cupped my face with her hands and kissed me long and deep. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were shining. "I checked everything," she whispered. "We're in great shape. I stopped taking the pill, and I want us to leave for a week. Anywhere you want. Just you and me." I raised an eyebrow at her, feeling my heart leap in my chest. "Okay, Mrs. Dynamo," I teased. "Organize it. I'm thinking somewhere tropical. Warm beaches, fishing, just us." Her grin grew even bigger. "Already done," she said proudly. "We leave Friday, the day after tomorrow. Delta flight out of Gainesville." I laughed and shook my head in amazement. "Have I ever told you," I said, pulling her closer, "that I don't just tolerate you? I adore you." She giggled, burying her face against my neck. "Well, maybe you could adore me just a little bit bigger," she teased. We spent the evening curled up together, dreaming out loud about white sand beaches and turquoise waters. At one point, joking around, she said, "You know, you could audition for a beach movie. They'd probably cast that handsome guy we saw strolling by the surf to play opposite me." I laughed, pretending to be wounded. "Should I be worried?" I asked. "Oh, please," she teased. I couldn't believe that guy was real. He looked like he walked off a magazine cover. "But no one could ever replace you." Her voice softened. "Do you want me to call our attorney and have him send over the divorce papers for you to sign?" I shook my head, tightening my arms around her. "I'll never sign anything that separates us," I said firmly. "You're it for me, Deb. You always have been. And I swear to you, I'll never touch another woman. Never." Her eyes filled with tears again, not of sadness this time but of something pure and deep. "You think maybe," she whispered, half laughing, "I'm just angling for a job as an adult film star?" I barked out a real full-bellied laugh at that one. "Debbie Summers," I said, pressing a kiss to her forehead, "you are the only star I'll ever need." Just then, from down the hall, I heard Dolly's sweet voice calling out for me. And just like that, my heart was full all over again. I slipped quietly behind Dolly and scooped her up into my arms, hugging her tight against my chest. She clung to me, her small body shaking with happy tears, and Debbie soon joined in, wrapping her arms around both of us, showering us with love and warmth. Debbie's mom and Uncle Bill stood nearby, watching the whole scene with tender smiles on their faces. It was one of those rare moments when everything in the world feels exactly right. Eventually, we gathered ourselves and made our way back inside the house. Over coffee, Debbie's mom told us how wonderful Dolly had been while we were away, how she had played sweetly, listened well, and charmed everyone she met. She said Dolly had told them, more than once, how much she wanted our family to stay together forever. Then, out of nowhere, Dolly climbed into Debbie's lap, her face bright with excitement. "I want a little brother," she announced proudly. "Or a little sister." I froze, staring at her, the meaning of her words sinking in. Slowly, a huge smile spread across my face, lighting me up from the inside out. Debbie giggled at my stunned expression. "I hope that big grin means you're at least half as happy as Dolly is," she teased. Without thinking, I leapt up from my chair, raced around the room, and scooped Dolly into my arms, spinning her in circles. "Mama's gonna have a baby?" I shouted, laughing. "Hooray!" Debbie watched us, her hands covering her mouth, tears of joy shining in her eyes as Dolly and I danced around the room, caught up in our happiness. Finally, I set Dolly down and she scrambled back onto Debbie's lap, kissing her cheeks all over while I knelt beside them and kissed Debbie too. Stepping back for a moment, I gazed out the window, overwhelmed. This wasn't just another chapter of life, it was a brand new beginning. And this time, Debbie wasn't going through it alone. During her previous pregnancy, she'd had no one. No strong arms to hold her, no voice reassuring her that everything would be okay. She had faced it all alone, and it had terrified her. But now she had me. She had a husband who would be right there for every moment, every step, every need. She radiated happiness, and honestly, she was even more beautiful than ever. If she experienced any morning sickness, I never saw it. There was a glow about her that everyone noticed, friends, co-workers, even strangers on the street. At work, it became almost comical how solicitous everyone was. Nobody let her lift so much as a folder. Doors were swung open before she even reached them, coffee was fetched without her asking, and half the time, someone was standing nearby just in case she needed something. People fussed over her like she was royalty, and I loved every second of it. But not every moment was picture perfect. One afternoon, Debbie and I were standing in line at the bank, waiting to deposit some business checks, when it all went south fast. Without warning, a group of armed men stormed the bank, shouting orders and firing shots into the air. The world turned to chaos. I immediately stepped in front of Debbie, shielding her with my body, and instinct took over. We had both trained for this, both carried concealed weapons now, and both of us were ready. Shots rang out. I felt the thud of another man slamming into me as he dropped to the ground. Debbie grabbed my arm. "Are you okay?" she shouted over the noise. "I'm fine." I yelled back. "Are you?" She grimaced. "Well, I ruined a new pair of pantyhose, and my best purse is a mess." Even in that madness, she made me laugh. We both checked ourselves quickly. No serious injuries. And together we pushed forward. The police stormed in a few minutes later. Debbie and I immediately set our weapons on the ground, raising our hands. The bank manager rushed over, breathless and shaking, and told the officers what had happened. He praised our actions, how we had saved many lives that day. 6 customers had been shot in the chaos. 1 tragically didn't make it. But 5 would survive. And of the robbers, 5 were dead, 1 was critically wounded, and another was found hiding, badly hurt but still breathing. 1 had even tried to make a break for it, only to be met with quick, sharp justice from the deputies outside. Footage from the bank security cameras confirmed everything. Debbie had remained calm under fire, even reloading her pistol during the shootout. The sheriff himself asked us to appear at a news conference that afternoon. Every major outlet would be there. They said afterward we could grant individual interviews if we wanted, but honestly, neither Debbie nor I cared about fame. We were just grateful we were alive, and so was Dolly. Life had thrown so much at us: grief, betrayal, fear, and violence. But somehow, standing there in that bright afternoon light, with Debbie's hand wrapped tightly around mine, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be. And soon, with a new little life on the way, our family would be even stronger. Most days when I needed a break from my own work, I'd find myself wandering past Debbie's office just to peek inside. More often than not, there she was, our little boy Johnny, nestled in her arms while she juggled phone calls and paperwork like the dynamo she was. She made it all look so effortless, soothing him with a quiet voice even as she handled business like a pro. One morning I was running late after dropping Dolly off at daycare. On my way to my office I cut through Deb's. She was sitting there, feeding Johnny, a soft white towel draped over him for privacy as she spoke on the phone. As she shifted, the towel slipped slightly, and before I could say a word, I noticed Jamal Washington, one of our junior architects, sitting not 3 feet away, staring. Not just glancing, staring. A bolt of anger flashed through me. Without hesitation, I stepped fully into the room, moving protectively between Deb and Jamal as I adjusted the towel back over Johnny. I locked eyes with Jamal for a split second, long enough to make my point without having to say a single word. Jamal mumbled something about heading to a meeting and beat a hasty retreat. I kissed Deb lightly on the forehead, tucked Johnny's tiny hand back under the towel, and headed out, trying to shake the unease gnawing at me. Later that afternoon, feeling restless and unsettled, I decided to take a walk up the beach behind our house. The sun was starting to sink low, casting long golden shadows, and most of the afternoon crowd had already packed up and gone home. I needed the space, to think, to breathe. I kept replaying that morning in my mind. Was Deb infatuated with Jamal? Was I seeing something real, or just letting old wounds, old doubts cloud my heart? Would she leave me? Would she take Dolly and Johnny with her? The thought nearly broke me in two. Would it be better if I just packed up, left, and let her be happy without me? But then I thought about Dolly. About her wide smile, her giggles, the way she clung to my neck when she was scared. I couldn't walk away. I wouldn't. No matter what, I had to fight for my family. For my wife. For my children. I sighed heavily and sank down onto a driftwood log, leaning back into the sun-warmed wood, staring out at the small waves sliding gently up onto the sand. Maybe the problem wasn't Debbie at all. Maybe it was me. Maybe something inside me was broken. Something that just wasn't good enough to hold on to the people I loved. I sat there, wrestling with those ugly thoughts, when I heard voices coming from further down the beach. It was Debbie and her friend Betty, walking back toward the house after shopping downtown. As they got closer, I could hear their conversation drift over the breeze. "Well," Betty said laughing, "Jamal is kind of cute." "Cute?" Debbie teased. "You can have him." They both burst out laughing. "No way," Debbie said between giggles. "John only gets fixed up with me." Betty laughed even harder, wiping her eyes. "And besides," Debbie added, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "I know Jamal saw John at the last pool party. You remember when John was playing with me and the kids? My husband got a little excited showing off." They both roared with laughter again. "Jamal was impressed," Betty giggled. Just then they spotted me sitting on the driftwood. I stood up, brushing the sand from my jeans, shaking my head at them both. "Ladies," I called out, teasing, "I don't care if Mr. Jamal is impressed, depressed, obsessed, or possessed. I am very much not available." Debbie grinned and ran up to me, throwing her arms around my waist. "You better not be," she said, laughing against my chest. "You're mine." And right there, holding her, I realized I had been worrying over nothing. Debbie wasn't going anywhere. She had chosen me, again and again, and that was something real. Something worth fighting for.